Two of the factors that really influence change are the scale and the pace. And what we're experiencing right now is the pace of change is happening, and the scale of change is happening in a way that it hasn't happened before. So for many organizations, they're laying off more people than they maybe ever have in their whole history in a matter of days or weeks, or completely shutting down parts of their business that will probably never reopen.
Welcome to the Job Hunting Podcast. I'm your host, Renata Bernardi. I'm a virtual career coach, a job hunting expert, and a career strategist. I am here to support professionals in the corporate sector, not-for-profit, and public sectors to have the careers that they want, to job hunt with ease and not feel stressed or overwhelmed when they are in between jobs and looking to advance in their careers. If you are an ambitious professional and you're keen to have a robust career plan above and beyond COVID-19 pandemic, this is the podcast for you. We will be addressing COVID-19 many times, but we're also long-term thinkers. And these episodes and these interviews should be listen to whenever you access this podcast. They're not time sensitive in any way. I hope that you enjoy this interview with Sandy Hutchison. In addition to the Job Hunting Podcast, I have created a series of tools and resources that I have given for free for my followers, and to access them, the best way is to sign up for the Reset Your Career community. This means that I will be able to let you know whenever there is a free resource and I can send it directly to you. I will send you a weekly newsletter with the Job Hunting Podcast, the new episode, and I will keep you in the loop about everything that's going on. So if you look at the show notes and go to my website, you will find the link. Give me your email. I will not share it with anyone. It's just so that we start this relationship, this conversation, and I can help you with your career. So just to give you an idea about what I do, I have the Job Hunting Podcast, but I also have a weekly live coaching session that I do on Facebook every week on Thursdays, and then I record it and it's available on YouTube and also on my website. I have an online course called the Job Hunting Made Simple course. You can register your interest at the moment and it will be available again in a couple of weeks if you want to register. And of course, I have my private clients which I coach ongoing. So have a look at my website. If you go to my website, you can also see all the links to my social media channels, and you can follow me wherever you feel more comfortable or you enjoy doing your social media catch-ups. So let's keep in touch, okay? And I don't know where you found this podcast, but it is available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google, and of course on my website. So wherever you found this, don't forget to subscribe. Sandy Hutchison is the CEO and founder of Career Money Life. Now, my company is certified provider of Career Money Life, which is fantastic because there are not many ways that career coaching and the services that I do can be certified in any other way. What it means is that I have gone through a very sort of thorough review and audit of all of the things that I do, and have been approved to be on this digital platform together with other service providers. And this has completely pivoted the way that professional development and outplacement to employees made redundant have been done forever and ever. It gives the employees a lot of freedom and independence to choose how they want and with whom they want to invest their benefits and how they want to progress with their careers. So for example, they can choose my services and they can see my benefits there, and they can compare and contrast that with other service providers on that platform. And if they want career coaching, they can of course choose me or other career coaches on the platform, or they can decide that they'd rather do business coaching or see a financial advisor. So it's really up to the employees and the former employees made redundant to pick and choose whatever they want. I love this philosophy and this idea of giving more power to the employees and to professionals. If you've been following this podcast, you would know that. So I see Sandy as a trailblazer and somebody that has come before me in this space. And Sandy was one of the first people that I reached out to when I was developing my ideas for this project, the project being the podcast and my services and the online course. And she gave me some valuable advice, and she's a great mentor and great supporter. So I'm definitely very keen for you to listen to this interview, and I hope you enjoy it. So we will be talking about redundancies, her redundancy, my redundancies before COVID-19, and how are they being done now? I mean, it's such a completely different space, and I was really keen to ask Sandy questions about redundancies during COVID-19, and then we move on to talk about options for those that have been made redundant, how to invest their time and money, and in what they should be investing their time and money. I hope that you find this valuable, and hope that you also keep in touch and listen to past and future episodes of the Job Hunting Podcast. Enjoy the interview. Ciao for now. So tell me a little bit about how you came to have the career that you have and founded Career Money Life.
Okay. Well, thanks, and nice to meet you, Renata. So I'd love to say I was one of those people that had like a really strategic plan, and everything had been, on a 20-year plan in terms of my career, but it's not like that at all. I'm originally from Canada. I've moved here like 24 years ago because I met an Aussie and came for personal reasons. But, I had studied philosophy and political science, and I worked in politics, and I worked in government in Canada. And so when I came to Australia, I kind of had to start all over again. I didn't know anyone other than my husband. It's in my 30s, I had to rebuild and redefine myself. And I ended up working in the private sector in consulting, and the work I'd done in government related to privatizing the air traffic control system in Canada. So it was a huge project, lots of complex HR and people issues, and I'd come from a background in communications and media, and found myself sort of working in the employee space at Mercer, which is ironically a Canadian company originally, but and started working around employee engagement, transition and organizational change, and ended up spending, I arrived here and got the job within 6 weeks and spent 16 years at Mercer and Marsh McLennan, the parent company. So taking on lots of different roles. I became a partner, was the youngest partner, the first female partner, first partner to go on parental leave, to work part-time. So in those days, quite a trailblazer on a lot of fronts. Ended up working for the parent company and taking on different roles in business development, and then moved in-house to the HRD role for Asia Pacific for Marsh McLennan. And then things shifted structurally and change of global CEO, and I found myself being made redundant, which was an interesting experience in its own right.
Yes, now I remember that. That makes so much sense, because I also remember the way that we met was because you used to run a Women in Leadership series at Mercer, and back then, it sounds so normal now, but back then it was
no one did that.
No one did that, and it was lovely. And I remember us flocking into the old office that Mercer used to have. What was that exhibition?
An exhibition, yeah.
Yes,
exhibition, the Boop office now.
Yes, and that was fantastic, and that was also I don't know if you remember this, but that's when I realized how different women are, because you would get a wonderful speaker and she would, say how her experience was. And then somebody on the floor was like, but I don't have any kids. Or, I have 5 kids, that's so different from me. So we realized that just because we were all women, we were quite different. I don't know if you remember that, but that was like, a very special moment for me. And I stopped putting all the eggs in one basket after that. Okay, so you were made redundant. What next? What did you do?
Well, it was a really interesting process for me because I had been kind of on a sort of fast track. I was on the succession plan for the CEO and all of these things, and so you have this sort of frame about your career and what you're capable of, and then all of a sudden somebody tells you something different, like and it's really hard not to internalize that and not to kind of fundamentally undermine your self-belief, your confidence. It's like, who am I if I don't have a business card that says I'm in this role, and am I still a valuable person, and how do I introduce myself to people? And there's a lot of really raw emotions that you need to work through when you get made redundant. And I think regardless of who you are, they're saying most people are going to go through that at least 2 or 3 times. At the moment, it's everyone's going through it, so I think it's been completely normalized now. But I guess through that process, I decided to take a little bit of time out. I had young kids. I've been working full-on Asia Pac role, traveling extensively. And over that period of time, I guess I got a chance to really think about what mattered to me and what I loved about my jobs and the work I had done. And, it really came back to me about impacting on people and individuals and affecting change in people's lives. And I just saw that the career transition space was one of those areas where the model was still kind of stuck in 1984. Binders, bad offices, men in bad suits, kind of, and the world had moved on so much since then. So I came up with this idea of creating a model of career transition that was actually centered around the employee and enabling them. And, a lot of the research I did in terms of understanding and building the business, showed from a psychological point of view, giving people choice, regardless of actually what the choices are, but just the mere idea of giving people choice fundamentally is a positive thing for their mental health. It makes them feel in control again, and it makes them feel like they're competent. And so that was really the premise behind the whole platform of Career Money Life, was to enable people to make their own choices about what services they want and how to use those that sort of value of the credit that's been provided by the company. So I started very slowly sort of thinking, wow, this is an idea, and should I actually build a business, and how do I go about doing that? And talk to lots and lots and lots of people on the HR side, the employee side, the supplier side, and that was fundamentally so important in terms of kind of designing and building what we ended up building, because we had all of that input early on. And so we've been running now 5 years. We have over 60 clients. We're profitable. Our biggest client is Virgin, and we're working really closely with them, trying to help as much as we can at the moment. So, I kind of feel like I've never been able to sit back and draw a breath and go, wow, we've done it. But, it is nice to sort of have hit a few of those milestones along the way. And, but what really drives me, and which I'm, I guess, living and breathing every day at the moment, is being able to support and help people through what is usually one of the most difficult times of their life.
Yes, I agree. And it seems like that your redundancy was sprung on you, or were you prepared over a few months? Was it something that was a surprise?
Look, there was a change of, so my boss, who I had a fantastic relationship with, left, and somebody else came into the role. It wasn't so much a personality thing. They just had a different idea about structure. And so it was they were in New York. I was here. They called me for our regular catch up. I remember it was actually on my son's birthday at like 7 a.m. And, look, she did a great job for what she had to do. And look, didn't blame her or any of those things, but that moment still sticks with you. And I think that's really important for HR
Yes.
and managers to know that, each time you're having that conversation with someone, it will be something they remember, and they'll remember how you treated them and how they felt. And, that can really make a difference if there's respect and dignity there.
Yeah, no, that's what I was trying to figure out, because what I have, I don't know, and I want to know from you what you're experiencing is that this COVID-19 situation may have been such a surprise to business that I'm not sure if they have been taking the time to do this properly, and you had, a somewhat good experience in the sense that it was done the proper way. Same with me. It was a surprise for me. I wasn't expecting to be made redundant, but my boss did it the best possible way. I had full control of how the communication was going to be made. I had the best possible, exit out of the organization. I chose, how to exit. It was really well designed and done in a very caring way. I'm not sure that this is possible now. What are you seeing in the market? I mean, you're on the thick of it, supporting organizations that are making their employees redundant. What's different now?
Look, I think a couple of things, and these are kind of drivers of when you're looking at change management models. Two of the factors that really influence change are the scale and the pace. And what we're experiencing right now is the pace of change is happening, and the scale of change is happening in a way that it hasn't happened before. So for many organizations, they're laying off more people than they maybe ever have in their whole history, in a matter of days or weeks, or completely shutting down parts of their business that will probably never reopen. And so there's so much more complexity in that. In some ways, kind of ironically, there's almost this, I guess, safety in numbers. So if I'm made redundant, maybe that's about me. But if everyone in my team or company or department is made redundant because of COVID-19, then it's clearly not about me. It's about a wider set of circumstances. So I think from an individual point of view, it maybe is a bit easier to process in some ways, in terms of your own self-worth. But from an organizational point of view, the complexity of trying to navigate individual needs and caring for people while managing at scale is a real tension. And I really feel for HR teams right now. They are absolutely at the pointy end of all of this, trying to lay people off and manage JobKeeper and manage working from home and manage, clients' needs, and have pretty much all been told to not spend a cent. And, it is a very tough time for our HR community right now.
It is. And I think that because we know now about the mental health issues and how empathetic and caring we need to be, it's very different from the 80s. I don't know if I'm old enough to remember,
I remember
the 80s. Right? And I think you probably remember as well. And I was young, but I remember my dad as a manager of people making others redundant, how much he struggled with that and how that impacted his well-being. And my dad went through months of being quite unhappy and feeling really down because of what he had to do to keep the businesses going. So he was in telecommunications at a time when things used to go up and down, and down. And there would, I remember there were times when he had to make 400 people redundant in one day, and that was really troubling for him. And especially in a country like Brazil, where I'm from, where there's no safety net. We know better now, and governments know better as well. So there's a lot of incentives for businesses to keep workers if they can. Are you seeing that happening? Is it, how are businesses coping between keeping them on job keepers versus restructuring and laying off completely?
Look, it's a really complex dynamic. So I was speaking with a friend who has a 17-year-old that works a casual shift, and her daughter is eligible and is getting $1,500, and she does one shift.
Same with my son. My son is doing 0 shifts and getting $1,500 because he works for the Rod Laver Arena and Etihad. They're closed. But he's getting JobKeeper.
So, the kid's still living at home. So, and then you've got, other organizations where there's real confusion about the number of hours, and people are saying, well, if you're getting paid this much, then you need to work this much. But they say, but I only worked one shift a week, so why should? So I think there's a lot of confusion. I mean, I understand the program was put in place really quickly, and it's kind of it's the 80-20 rule. But I think that's created some challenges, because sometimes people feel like maybe they'd be better off on job seeker than job keeper, and different things. But look, I think what I've seen is organizations kind of went through this shock phase where it was like, oh my God, what is happening? And then thinking, how do we function? Moving people to working from home, looking for the government support. And I think as that started to flow through and people have understood the complexity behind that, they're now at the point I'm seeing a lot of companies making decisions saying, financial year end is coming. Yes. Our projections for the next 6 to 12 months are not what they used to be. So even if we get through JobKeeper and things come back, they're not going to come back the way they were. And so we need to make some cuts now. So I'm starting to see a lot more redundancies happening in organizations at this time. And I think that will carry through. I think there has been some of that, trying to have people reduce hours, reduce salary, and many companies have put those practices in place. Having people take leave, move leave forward, move to part-time hours. So all of that's happening, but I think, it really depends on the business and their economics. But I think there is still a need, sadly, for many organizations to make the tough call to let people go.
Yes. So it was going to be my next question. So I really want to, you half answered it, but I wanted to get a feel for you. Do you foresee in Australia more redundancies as a domino effect in the coming months?
Yeah, sadly. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, me too. And do you think comparing, I mean, you're from Canada. I'm assuming that you're keeping a finger on the pulse of other countries as well. It's very interesting how similar countries in terms of being developed countries are kind of going very in different directions for the first time. Like it seems like they're going in completely different directions because of the policy levers that they're taking, right? So do you think that Australia will be better off or worse off, like compared to a country like Canada, for example? Such a complex system, because Australia is such a a service economy that if other countries don't do well, I'm not sure that we can do well.
That's exactly it. So I think in terms of the public policy and the health settings, Australia, we're so lucky to be here, the lucky country. Like, often Canada and Australia are very similar on, most economic indicators and things, but because of the proximity of the US, I mean, Canada's sitting at over 60,000 cases and over 3,000 deaths, and still spiking, where we've got so much lower. So I think in terms of the impact on the healthcare systems, we're better off, but the challenge will be, Australia is hugely reliant on tourism. No one's going to be traveling to Australia. We're also hugely reliant, as you know, on international students. A huge part of our economy. Those students aren't going to be coming either. Our export markets are going to be impacted because those countries won't be, building buildings and using steel and doing all the things they do. And the service economy is also going to be impacted. And there's a lot of organizations here that are, part of multinational companies. So if the parent company in the US or Canada or Europe is badly impacted, they're not going to have the budgets to be investing and growing the businesses here. So I think, there's going to be a long period of kind of transitioning to a new, and I think the idea that we'll just turn the switch and go back to the way things were isn't going to happen. I think it will be a tougher job market. That was on the cards even before COVID-19. The economic indicators were suggesting that we were heading into a slower growth period. The future of work, automation in the workplace. And I think what we're seeing is organizations are being, forced to pivot and say, okay, well, how are we going to do things more effectively, more, technologically based? And so all the AI and bots and all the stuff that was kind of in the plans, people have had to go, right, let's start making this happen now. So I think that's actually going to potentially escalate some of those job losses that were going to happen anyway. So there's a real period where there's going to be a lot of shifting and changing in terms of what jobs are available. And I think what that means for the job seeker is the importance of reskilling and upskilling and doing that in the areas where there's going to be demand.
Yes. So what are you seeing from having this platform and having so many professionals in between jobs using the platform? What are people interested in right now? What are they doing? Or do you have recommendations, as an experienced expert in this area of what people should be doing when there's so much uncertainty in the market?
So there's kind of, I guess, a few levels to it. So there's if you're thinking Maslow, there's kind of the base stuff. So I need a resume. Mm-hmm. I haven't been in the job market in 20 years. I don't even have a LinkedIn profile, or I have one, but there's got very little content in it. So it's that kind of hygiene factors. I need to get, job search ready. And so helping people with that. So understanding, nowadays, we were saying on our social media, boring is the new sexy when it comes to CVs. So all the fancy fonts and images and your picture and tables, all gone, because you put that through an applicant tracking system and forget it. You're spat out the other end. It can't read it. So, for a lot of people, that's like revolutionary. They had no idea that's how the game works. Understanding that you might have to do a video interview where there's not actually even another person on the other end of it. There's just a set of preset questions that you need to record and send in. So how do I learn to use Zoom? How do I learn to do a video interview? This is all completely new to me. So there's all that kind of basic stuff that people are scrambling to get their hands around and understand. And so we're offering with some of our big clients, we do regular daily webinars, and they're very well subscribed on all of those things, job search, networking, LinkedIn, to help them understand all that. And then there's kind of the next level, which is kind of the bigger question. So, who am I? And am I just going to go back to my old job, or am I going to use this time to retrain and do something different? And what skills do I have? And how do I take those skills and transfer them? And so that deeper thinking piece, and we're seeing that with the pilots right now from Virgin, for example. Some of them just want to hang tight until they can come back. Yeah. Others are saying, maybe it's time for me to get out and reskill and move into something else. So what does that look like? And so in terms of the services that then support that, we partner with a lot of organizations like AIM and other education providers like General Assembly and different things. So we're seeing the skills piece is really important, and we do recommend that for people. So what we say is, even if you've been working in project management, but you don't have any credentials, so consolidate that experience by taking a course and getting a credential. So when you go for the next job in project management, it's not just I have experience, it's I've undertaken a course while I was on my job search phase, to consolidate my learning and to have that credentialed formally. So I've got this skill set, this experience, but I've also got this credential. And that can just be the thing that edges you into the yes pile rather than the maybe pile. Because it's showing you're proactive, you're taking initiative, you're committing to your career and to your personal development, you have a growth mindset. All of those things are really important. So I think it's important that people think about that, but not just any, random course. You need to be strategic about what's going to make sense for your career. So those are the things we're seeing. A lot of the coaching people really value right now, some career coaching and getting that support. And then there's kind of a mix of things where, some people are getting some help with their financials because they're really not sure. They've got a redundancy payment. Do I pay off the mortgage? What do I do with it? Yes. Should I take money out of super? That whole side of it as well. And their well-being. So, maybe doing some yoga.
There's so much to do.
Yes.
It is a lot to do, but it's really important. So we interviewed two guests previously on this podcast. One was Alistair Freeman, who wrote a very great post on LinkedIn that went viral about his experience leaving NAB, having been made redundant, and how the market understood or misunderstood him, and how he then managed to find a job in the not-for-profit sector in regional New South Wales. So he was Melbourne based, and that was the episode we called it a positive redundancy, because he was so philosophical about it. I mean, he did go through some tough experiences with recruiters and so on, but ultimately he did exactly what you said. He took the time to think about what he actually could do with that opportunity. He saw it as an opportunity, and do I need to be in Melbourne? And I think more now than ever, especially with remote work as an opportunity and a bargaining opportunity for future work, you could actually consider moving somewhere else. And we also interviewed Paul Burrows, who left PHP as a very senior exec and realized that he had always loved finance, as in his personal finance, and decided to reskill and then worked in banking for many years and is now retired. But we always like in the podcast to give those opportunities. What do you think is the difference between somebody that's made redundant in their 30s versus somebody that's made redundant, let's say, in their mid-50s? Have you noticed, or do you have any advice that's different between one and the other?
Yeah, look, I think the emotional context is quite similar, and it's not necessarily age related. It's kind of more about the individual. But I think some of the differences that we're seeing is people in their 30s are early to mid-career. They maybe haven't had as long in one area of specialization. So there's still, I think, a lot more flexibility to perhaps, pivot or transition into different areas. Also, they haven't been away from school that long that the prospect of going back to study is so daunting and so foreign. I think for people that are 55 plus, that some of those things are a bit more, bit scary to imagine. Also, often, they're in a position where financially they've built a lifestyle around probably a higher income at that stage of their career than a 30-year-old. They have potentially children and school fees and mortgages and other obligations. So sometimes those pressures around being able to look after your family and provide and meet those financial needs are a lot greater. And so the stress on that group of people can be much greater and frankly, sadly, there is still a lot of age discrimination. So, some of the things we remind people about is, not putting when they went to high school, not if they've been out of university for over more than 15 years, don't put the years you graduated. You don't have to include every job you've ever had. So leave off the early ones. Don't let them know how old you are, because, we know there's a lot of that discrimination out there. So, use what you can. But I think too, at that age group, there's also sometimes more financial security. And so sometimes people are then in a position where they can take some risks. And, we're seeing a lot of kind of that entrepreneurial activity happening amongst that group, where they're in a position to say, I've always wanted to start a business doing this or that, and they're in a position to do those things. So there's kind of some swings and roundabouts, but different.
That's an interesting point. I think that you had this opportunity to have your own business, and I guess you have to go through certain things in life to enable you to actually have the financial security and the time even to enable a business to flourish. I have been asked, should I open a business now? And normally it is a consideration when you're a career coach and somebody's made redundant and has, savings and the redundancy package to play with and to consider opening a business. What would you say to somebody who is keen to open a business in this current environment? Because it's kind of a risky environment to open a business, right? And so I've been asking people to think many times before taking that route.
Yeah, look, I think obviously it depends on what the business model is and what the services are and whether there's something that are going to be in demand. But at the same time, you don't want to set up a business for a service that's going to be in demand for a short period of time and it's just a bubble, and then you haven't thought about the long term. So my advice would be that if people are going to do that, they need to take this incredibly seriously. I think people get excited about the logo and the ideas and, not the boring stuff like actually building a cash flow projection and building a detailed business plan and, putting those numbers together and then cutting them in half and then taking that to 5 people, that are super cynical and get them to review it and then go out and talk to a whole bunch of people to find out if they would actually buy this product. Is there a need for this product or this service? Who else is doing it? I'm amazed at how often people run off because they've come up with a good idea and start to build a business without doing any of that research to only find out, oh, actually, 3 companies already do this and they're, 3 years ahead of you. And, I don't want to be discouraging. I've done it myself, but, I did spend a long time researching first. And, I think you need to be super, super careful, particularly, if you're using your personal money, your family money, or friends to set this up. It's a big step, and you need to be careful. So you can do it as a sidekick. You can have another job. You can slowly build up, your confidence that what you're doing is working. Try and get one client that will partner with you, and even if you're doing it for free for them, make sure this is a viable product. Make sure it's going to work.
That's great advice. Sandy, do you have any final words of wisdom for the podcast listeners?
Oh dear, I don't know about words of wisdom. I mean, I think,
support, motivation.
Yes, it is absolutely, the most kind of unprecedented, and I know that word's been so overused, but it is unprecedented times right now for job seekers. Hang in there. Do what you need to do to get through. We've recommended people, there's a whole lot of ideas around short-term cash. So, whether it's volunteering for medical studies or Uber driving or, talent agencies or selling stuff on eBay, if you need to manage your cash and do things to get by while you look for your dream job, that's okay right now. And everybody understands that. The other thing I would say is just get out. I know you can't be physically out, but get out on LinkedIn. Contribute, build your network right now. If you can't find a job right now, think about in 3 or 4 months' time when I start a job, what are all those things I would have liked to have had done in my life? So if there's things I want to learn or things I want to experience or people I want to reconnect with, make sure you're doing those things. So you're doing things that add value. Just spending day after day kind of on the job boards and searching is going to be a bit soul destroying. So be kind to yourself.
That's good advice. Thank you so much, Sandy. Thanks for your time.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure, Renata. Thank you for the opportunity.